demand what you want and what we want is respect, right? Yo, just sit up on the track, I know so you have to deal with it right. Freedom every time for the sisters. Check this. Watch this.
Here we go now. Listen, if I'm boom boom rule, I be the ruler like Slick Rick. Get with this quick witted Adidas wearing chick. Papa got a brand new bag. Mama got a brand new Jag. Or go tag. I ain't no old hag. I represent not only in the kitchen, in the bedroom, but also in the boardroom. So give me more room. Deny my opportunity. You in jeopardy. Yo, set me free. Don't hinder me. Let me be.
I'm fighting for freedom. I got the heat in case you need them. Straight soldier. Ain't nobody told ya. Hold up on them lies. I know your games and your plans.
Technology. Hello, welcome to the Book Slam. Okay, for some reason my camera isn't working. It's not adding me to the live stream. Let me see if I can add them to it. No, it's not doing that either.
Oh no.
I actually don't know what's happening. Okay, that's fine. Welcome to the Book Slam Xtra. I'm your host, Jules. I am an author of dark fantasy with elements of sword and sorcery and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. And I'm also a publisher, and I also do this. So yeah, welcome. And I also have my co-host today. Hello, Adam. So
Hello,
you
Jules.
talk up really loudly. Hello. We're going to try and fix the camera issue. I'm not entirely sure what the problem is.
Okay.
But at least we're live on Clubhouse, so that's all good.
Right. Yeah.
How are you doing?
Great. Hi, I'm Adam. I also write fantasy, more in the vein of high epic with a very queer bent direction. That's very, very high focus for me. And mine also has a lot of erotica in it, so that's exciting. And yeah, so my week, we had some new neighbors move in across the street, and I baked them cookies, so that was fun.
That's nice. See, that's really nice. I like it when people do things like that because you're kind of caring about the neighbours a little bit, and I think that's really important. Did you have a nice weekend? Did you have a nice week, apart from doing lots of baking?
Yeah, pretty normal. Working on some new stuff that I'm writing, and yeah, just taking care of stuff. Yeah,
that's cool.
What about you? How was your week?
Oh, my week. Do you know what? My week has got more amazing as the time has gone on. Today has been an extremely uplifting and motivating day for me. I'm very happy.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah. It's the week started off a bit weird, but it's it's all right at the moment. I am enjoying it.
That's great.
Yeah. So now I thought what we could do today is to normally what we do is we tend to read large chunks from our writing, and we tend to read things that like whole chapters, for example. And I thought we could mix it up a little bit today, and I thought we'd do something a little bit different because for the last few weeks we've been actually focusing on a particular style of writing, or how we write particular things. So like last week we focused on one particular aspect of writing, which was sort of the character archetypes, and then previously we spoke about the editing process.
I love those conversations.
Pardon?
I very much enjoyed those conversations. Yes.
Yeah, they're really interesting. But I thought this week what we could do is we could maybe, like, rather than read really massive chunks of our work, we could actually just do very small bits and like break it down and sort of do an analysis on how we've done particular parts of it. So I thought maybe action would be a good one to look at.
I think that's a great place to focus. Yeah, let's do that. And an interesting way to read little portions instead of a big piece. Yeah, that's great.
And also with writing action, you end up people write it in different ways, and I think it depends on what kind of action you're actually writing would then obviously dictate you know, like how it's written. So for example, I would imagine like a romantic type action, you really focus on what the person's doing, you know, how the person's feeling and all that kind of thing. Whereas when it's like high octane, heart-wrenching, you know, very action focused behavior that the character's doing, I would imagine that it would be, the writing would be shorter, the sentences would be more succinct and be tighter. So have you got a bit that you would like to read to us?
Sure, yeah, and also on the subject of action, I feel like I have a fellow writer who talks about writing action and the importance of, specifically the importance of geography in writing, and I always keep that in mind, that when a lot of action is happening, it's very easy to lose track of where you are in a place in the story, and so it's important to keep your reader with you along that track and make sure that they're following the action that you're presenting. You know, I think that's good. So I'll read a little bit, and I also think that action can apply to high action battle sequences, but also I think action also applies to the act of creeping around a house. I think there's a lot of different ways that action, you need to portray it clearly, or you can very easily lose what you're trying to say. So yeah, let me read a little teeny portion here, and and we can see what we think of it. Read. Yeah, okay. So this is from my novel, The Starting End, that I'm working on having published with Jules' company, so I'm very excited about that. And yeah, this is chapter 20. Greenhurst walked along the street alone. He was beaming down at the kitchen tool in his massive hand. Even held by the burly chef, the thing looked too large. The man carried a cleaver. The soft wrap around the handle felt very satisfying, and he tested and adjusted the grip. It was sheathed in fine leather, decorated with embroidery at the edges. The instrument would have been impractical for almost anyone, but he continued to turn it over in his hands, enthralled with his new enormous piece of cutlery. The gigantic knife then made two noises, and Greenhurst took a moment to appreciate the first. He listened to the whispered hush of delicately brushed fabric against the smooth metal surface of the cleaver. That lovely sound of his new blade being unsheathed was followed by the horrible ringing crang of metal connecting with stone. The noise drew everyone's attention to the door. One corner of the jolly chef's gigantic, gargantuan, rectangular blade sat at rest, sunk into the earthen and cobble road. The handle was gripped in his massive fist, and the burly red-haired man began to walk forward. Dirt roiled up as it was slowly plowed by the corner of the prodigious blade. Greenhurst drew towards the entrance, and his upper lip curled malicious. His free hand came to his face, and he rubbed it across his jawline. His fingers curled into a grip, and he pulled his burly bristles forwards as his face broke into a wicked snarl. He made a noise between a growl and a raspberry. Greenhurst stuck out his tattooed tongue, released his beard, and snapped his hand forward as if he was flinging food off of it. And I'm going to stop right there, because then the action completely changes, and I wanted to focus on his action of what he was doing. So, yeah. Thanks for listening to that little portion.
It kind of reminds me a little bit, you know, in action movies where they have like slow motion sort of mode just before action, or in the middle of the action where there's a slow motion or slow motion.
That's exactly what I was picturing when I wrote this.
Oh,
that
wow!
That's what I was picturing. Yes, a slow motion thing that would lead to something completely different. Yes. Oh, that's perfect.
I mean, that's pretty good, because like when you're, and you know, I spoke to, like, I suppose this sort of not the expert on writing, but the expert in terms of action and what happens when you're on a battlefield or in the middle of conflict in that sort of sense, or combat. And he said that there is quite often moments in time during the conflict where slow motion actually happens. It's not just a thing that films do to try and make it more tense. There are moments where time does slow. And so that slowing of time is really important as part of the action sequence. And I also think as well, if you have it too fast paced the whole way through, the reader finds it really difficult to keep up, because if they're invested in that character or characters by having...
There we are.
Yay! The Indy has worked his magic. Thank you so much, Indy. I don't know what happened there. That was so bizarre.
We made it work. We made it work. That's fine.
We're live videoed now. Thank you. All right. So when you've got action going on, you know, and you are and you're in that center. And you're in that center. I agree. Completely agree. You did great read. When you're kind of caught up in that action and you've got like the bullets flying around you, or, you know, swords clashing around you, and your life is potentially at risk because of the adrenaline that pumps, it almost slows time to get you ready, to prep you. And it is literally do or die. And, you know, he said it doesn't happen all the time. But certainly when you're in combat, there are moments or pockets of time when that can happen. So it's so important to capture that. And I think you captured that really well. I love how you described the way that he removed his sheath and how it felt and how the character experienced just that motion. And then the follow through to sort of like what happened next. You know, is the person, tell us a little bit about the two characters here that's going on.
So Greenhurst, up until this point in the story, has been this. He's this big, burly, wonderful fellow. He's a chef. He takes care of the food. He lives in this community that's outside of the city in the forest. My novel is a high epic fantasy, and there's a little magic-y stuff. So they live in this magic community outside the forest. And up to this point in the story, up to chapter 20, he's been this sweet, wonderful. I hint at little things that maybe he's a little tougher than he seems the whole way through. But this is the first time that he is about to engage in battle, and the reader gets to realize, oh, he's a seasoned warrior as well as all these other wonderful things that we've been experiencing so far. So yeah, he leads them on a journey from the forest into the city, and they're staying in this fabulous this fabulous inn. It's fun. And then later where we jump to this scene, and the reader doesn't. I don't think the reader knows where we're going. It's, oh, we're gonna go have a walk on the beach, and then he sneaks off, and this battle takes place, and yeah, it's so good. I love it. And this is just the lead into it. Yeah. So thanks.
It's so interesting because you've got such a mix of it in your book, haven't you? With sort of, you know, like romantic things, erotic things, as well as the fantasy, high fantasy, as well as sort of undertones of death and destruction and despair, even though it's kind of woven in a different way. So like, I don't know, like, you know, for example, like a dark fantasy, which focuses very much on the dark and despair and all the bad stuff, and that tends to be the bit that drives the story forwards.
Yeah.
So it's a different take on it, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, very much so. This is sort of the opposite. My whole world is bright and wonderful, and when I describe it to people, whoa! When I describe it, to people,
whoa!
Zoom in, zoom. A lot of people ask if it's a utopian world, and then I have to explain, no, there's also all this other side of it that's happening. It's because the whole story takes place basically from one person's perspective, like you said. You get this person's feel for what's happening, and to say Greenhurst is not the main character, the character I read from. He's so important to me that I had to give him his own little spotlight, and I do that much later in the story again for him. But the story follows this one character the whole time, so it's all focused on his perspective. And all he's experienced up until this point is the wonderfulness of the world. So it does seem very utopia-ish, but it's not. And so yeah, there are people who like to hurt other people, you know, just to put it in the most simple terms. So now we need to jump back to what you said. You talked about the research you did for studying action. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Who you talked to, the information you got and stuff?
So in terms of the sort of like the font of knowledge that I got in terms of action scenes, is actually my husband. He was in the army for 22 years, which is a full military career from start to finish. And so he's been in combat numerous times, and has also, been injured because of it. And so, although that's modern combat, which isn't what my book has, the process of emotions and the way that humans deal with that would be the same, I would imagine. If you've got an arrow flying at you, it's no different from having bullets flying at you. In the medieval times, for example, not that my book's based on the medieval times, but my character uses a sort of like a magical bow and a magical sword, or science fiction bow and a science fiction sword, depending on which way you want to look at it and depending on which book you read up to. It kind of does have more medieval type themes. Fascinated with the Vikings, for example. And so there's been numerous conversations that I've had with him, and also lots of reading as well, from other service people in terms of what combat feels like, and also documentaries about war. I know it sounds really lame to kind of
totally.
I'm watching like loads of documentaries, but actually they're really interesting and they give you lots of information.
I think watching movies has been a huge influence on my writing style. No, totally. Whether it's a documentary or a complete fiction, I think that any creative type of person can draw influence from all sorts of different things in different media, and other people's creativity is always inspiring. So I think that's awesome. Whether it's nonfiction or fiction. Yeah,
I think action is hard to write anyway, isn't it? Because you've got to try and capture each moment, but without capturing each moment, you have to provide enough information that's going to make the reader be able to see what's happening in their mind, whilst also keeping them grounded in the reality of what the character is facing. And I think that could be quite difficult to be able to do sometimes.
I used to make a joke. Yeah, I used to make a joke that you don't see car chases in a book. And some comedian back in the 90s said that you look at what would it be? What would it be? He drove fast. He looked in the rearview mirror. He drove fast. He turned left. He drove fast. Like, how would you do that? And I used to make that joke.
Go on.
Well, I used to make that joke until I heard on our show, on the podcast, I don't know, a couple months ago, somebody we had on read a car chase that was totally believable, and it felt like an actual car chase. And I thought it was totally impossible outside of movies, and it's achievable. You can totally write action of anything.
You absolutely can. One of my favorite go-to books when I was growing up was actually The Hardy Boys, by Franklin W. Dixon, but not his original ones.
I don't think I've read them. Okay.
They're really good. They're teenage books, really. But they're a really huge influence. And there is a car. See, this is how much of an influence they are, because they're basically about two teenage boys who have a crime-fighting dad who also go out and go crime-fighting and sort of solve mysteries and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
As you do when you're 17 and 18.
Very normal stuff. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And but there's scenes in those books which stick with me today, even quite a few years later. But there is a car chase there as well, and it was written so well. I could picture it, and it actually went around a cliff, and they were shooting at each other, and it was written really well.
Okay.
Yeah, really good.
Well, that's cool then. That's cool.
They are worth the read if you want a quick, daytime read. That's not going to last very long, and it's got action throughout, and it's just simple, straightforward. But because of that, they were a big influence over my writing. So yeah, you can write anything. I think it's just, you've got to have the courage, haven't you, to be able to pick up that pen and have a go. All right, you ready for one of mine?
I would love. Yes, give us an excerpt. Give us a little action.
Okay. All right. Hang on. Let me just maneuver my screen around a touch.
Oh, and remind everyone what you're reading. What you're reading from.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I forgot about that bit. So I'm reading from book 2 of my dark fantasy series. This is book 1 here. I haven't actually got book 2 to hand at the moment. This is book 1 of Thorns and Demons. My second book, what I'm reading from, is of Shadow and Swords. They follow on. So it's a series with the same protagonist. It's from first person perspective as well, which is different from yours. So that's quite interesting.
Cool. We're excited.
Okay.
I'm going to mute myself. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. Loosing a couple of arrows made one of the soldiers drop to the ground, whilst another twisted around, his body contorting from the pain and the force of the hit. But he did not fall. Instead, he lurched towards us, drawing his sword. Before the blade could glow, I fired at him, the arrow striking him in the eye, and he fell to the ground. Despite searching every pocket and belt, neither had a key. We had to continue deeper into the castle to find a guard. Raven and I glanced at each other. Our eyes met. Here we go. We tracked the corridor through to a larger open space where a group of well-armed soldiers stared at us. For several long seconds no one moved as their faces expressed confusion and surprise at our entry into the ancient ruin. Raven and I remained frozen in time. He with his sword outstretched, and I with my bow, with an arrow ready. And just as the moment seemed to stretch on for eternity, they unsheathed their swords, causing the room and eyes to light up with amber. The freeze in time disappeared, and in a hurry I replaced my bow and drew my sword, and they raced towards us, their weapons raised, yelling as they charged, spittle spraying from their mouths, and their eyes were wide. Keeping my sword low, I thrust it up into the chest of one, spun and into the cheek of the other. Out of the corner of my eye was a flash of orange. I turned again, lifted my sword to his shoulder. My sword connected, but we were face to face. He glared at me, shoved me backward, and slashed his sword against my arm. It burned a large gash, and I dropped my sword, crying in pain. The throbbing from my leg added to the overwhelming exhaustion that hit me. Somehow adrenaline kept me going. The soldier raised his sword above me, the point aimed at my throat. Through the sweat that stung my eyes, I stared up at him from my knees. Something hard knocked me to the ground, and as the blinding flash exploded from behind my eyes, so too did the pain in my head as the world spun around me. On my hands and knees, with the world turning grey, I crawled away from whoever had hit me. Blood dripped from my mouth with spit, and my limbs felt like jelly. Every tiny movement sent waves of nausea and pain over my whole body as I cowered away from the assailant. What just happened? I'm going to stop there, as we're only reading snippets. What did you think? You have no sound, my lovely. You need to unmute your mic.
I'm like yammering away over here.
That's fine.
And you did a slow motion thing, just like you were talking about a second ago. That was awesome. Oh God, the swords, they clash, and they're slowly drawing from their scabbards. Awesome.
It's interesting, isn't it? How medieval, like the medieval realm, in terms of like the Vikings, the Dark Ages, even though that era never really hits the USA, it's still so prevalent today. And I've seen lots of people online talk about how, the medieval stuff's done and it shouldn't be used in fantasy anymore. But it's like, it's kind of part of fantasy. I don't see how you can remove it from it in its whole. I don't know. That's my opinion. But
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that all of us as high fantasy authors, we all look to inevitably J.R.R. Tolkien as the first high fantasy author.
Yeah.
That before that, he was looking to mythologies, and that was where he was. And I know that a lot of us take influence from that, but he set the standard. If the elf or the dwarf or the human is wearing armor, then that's what we're going to do all the way through for all of history. And the fact that humans did wear armor in part of time, I think that was what influenced him to do that. Like, and we're not going to stop. We're always going to use medieval as sort of the influence, but I think it goes back to him setting the standard. Tolkien, the way that sci-fi is predictive of the future, fantasy is reflective of the past. I feel like that's inevitably the same way he was looking back to mythology, to Norse mythology about magical rings and everything. Yeah, I think that fantasy looks back and sci-fi, and then you can blend them together, of course. But in general, I think that sci-fi looks forward and fantasy looks back. Yeah, that to me. So you're going to inevitably get either native peoples type of mythologies, or like you talk about Vikings or medieval, anything back that's an era that you could use to create inspiration for yourself. I think that's great. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think as well that, what you write should be just yours. I think it's really important that you retain your own take on it. And I think it's okay to not like a particular trope, I suppose. But sometimes that trope is a trope for a reason, because it actually works. And so therefore, it's worth continuing on that trope. Does it work for everything? No, for sure. But like in the bit that I just read you, you've got the castle, you've got the dungeon, you've got the sword fight, and you've got the bow and arrow that she's using. But what you haven't got is you haven't got the traditional swords or the traditional bow and arrow. And you haven't got an army that is a traditional medieval army. It's an army of child soldiers that are born and bred, sort of almost, captured slaves who are forced into it. And they're forced to have this weapon, this ultimate weapon that the enemy is after, and therefore, it kind of stems through there in terms of their battle techniques. Hence the glowing that you're seeing is the glowing of their swords. But yeah, I mean,
you've got people of different. So you've got a big muscular seeming guard versus what seems like a much frailer little girl who gets pushed to the ground. She may be a teenager, I think. But yeah, I feel like that's she may have some sort of powerful weapon, but somebody pushes you down just because they're bigger than you. That's believable. Just the mere force of it. Like everything seemed really, really fun and real and action packed. And of course, I was ready for more.
She's a teenager, so she certainly hasn't got the experience. Raven is more of a seasoned warrior than she is. She's still learning the ropes. But I've tried to keep it as close to reality as I can, whilst having those elements in it from fantasy, which I think you've done as well in yours, even though you've got elements of all sorts of different things. But you certainly have got that high fantasy going on in your novel. Which I love. So have you got another excerpt you'd like to read? Because what I'd like to look at is maybe, whilst you're sort of like hunting for the next bit quickly, what I'd quite like to look at is how action focuses on the slow bit and then the lead up to the speed, and how that transition happens, and how is that written? What is the effect of that? How do we see it as a reader? How is that portrayed? That's I'm quite interested to see how you've done it, because obviously I think yours is going to be different from mine. Whilst you're doing that also, I'm just going to welcome Maxime, who's also here. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Maxime. I know you're in Clubhouse and I know you're listening. And I will invite you on. Hello. I will invite you on to speak in a very short while. So thank you so much for being a guest here. We greatly appreciate it. And I hope you're enjoying listening to us as well. Gabble on. All right. Are you ready, sir?
I've got another little part here, and I found a little section that contrasts yours, where this is my newer novel that I'm working on. That's my work in progress. It is also fantasy, more dark, like your kind of stuff. And there's a section here where a person who does not realize she's become empowered. She doesn't know that you can do this. This has happened to her, and she's about to have an encounter. So it starts very slow, and then it all of a sudden crashes. So I'll read the two parts together because it's pretty short. Okay. Agrel did not know how far she already walked or how much further she needed to go, but she was free. She was never aware that her life in the community was a prison, and this new freedom in her was like a heartbeat that she did not know she possessed. The hour grew later, and the moon continued to slide across the star-speckled sky. Agrel's eyelids were heavy, and her brain felt muddled from the lack of sleep, the limited food, and her recent horrific experience. She could barely comprehend her past, but she could also not even consider her future. Her mind seemed to have given up. She no longer thought about or paid attention to her surroundings. The trudge of her footfalls felt endless. Behind her, a strange sound began to rise in the quiet of the night. Agrel was delirious and did not turn around. The noise was a muffled and repetitive thumping that grew only a little louder. But since the sound neither appealed to her exhaustion nor her hunger, her bleary brain told her to ignore it. Then something collided with Agrel and sent her sprawling to the side of the path. The hood she wore blocked her vision, and a solid object smashed against the side of her face. Knocked to her knees at the edge of the forest, she pushed herself up against a tree trunk and yanked the hood back. Her eyes flashed wide as a dark shape grabbed one of her arms. Agrel's head swam and her ears were ringing, but she could see a second shadow bearing down on her. Unnamed fears froze her to the spot. She did not understand what was happening or what these shadow entities desired. But then Agrel's terror took form in her mind. It was the Red Priest and his acolyte. They caught up to her and were going to murder her just like they did her cousin. The man was going to slit her throat, bleed her out, then decapitate her. The boy flashed into her mind with that expression of utter desperation on his face before the sweet embrace of death released him. Agrel was going to die horribly. She was going to die alone. The second dark shape reached out for her. She could not go back. There was a new desperate necessity brought on by her emancipation from that isolated existence, and it sparked a self-preservation that flared to life in that moment. Agrel's free hand came to the hatchet that hung from her belt, and she swung its blade at the oncoming shadow. Chopping wood was a daily part of life in the community, and she knew how to use the tool. She used it now as a weapon. It was impossible to know when the blade was last sharpened, but it sailed through the first being of shade with what seemed to be no resistance. Agrel released its handle as the hatchet entered the second. The hands that held her vanished. She fell to her knees and burst into uncontrolled tears that shook her whole body. The shadows were nothing, mere figments of her traumatized mind. Agrel wailed her sorrow into her palms, and it was long moments before she again caught her ragged breath. And I'll stop there because there's a whole nother twist that's coming in a second, so I won't keep going. But yeah, so sleepiness and then sudden chaos.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how you did that transition, from that sort of the slowness of the sentences, and then they became shorter as it became more action centered. And there were some really important words there as well. There was something to do with her breath and how she was breathing, and that's really important, isn't it? Because when you're in I thought for a second, oh my god, did I hear it wrong? I think that's really important because when you've got action things going on, we are very aware of how we're breathing. I suppose modern would be linking it to, I don't know, being shouted at by someone, for example. And when if our heart's racing, and then we're very aware of how we're breathing. If you're not comfortable with conflict, or if you're in a situation where it's really scary, perhaps walking down a dark alleyway on your own for some reason, or sometimes, walking alone at night on your own, can be quite scary. So we become very aware of how our breath affects us and our hearts and how they pump. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote in the way that you did that.
So with the first novel that I'm releasing that I'm already finished and is more pretty fantasy stuff, I wanted just it to be wonderful and happy, and I chose to do this one sort of the opposite. I wanted horrible things to just happen over and over again. These two stories aren't related. They don't happen in the same universe. They're not part of the same series at all. I just wanted to challenge myself and see what it was like to write chaos and madness, and that's what I did. It's a total dystopian future where as I said, there's some she's been empowered and she's got things she doesn't know about, and she's gonna have to learn about that in her story. But yeah, it's just horrible. Every while I'm writing, because I'm so used to writing pretty fantasy stuff, the whole time I'm going, every time I'm like, oh, this is so wonderful, I'm like, oh, I got to kill some people now, and I do that. And I have horribleness repetitively.
How does it feel going from writing what you have done in the start and end to what you're writing now, which is obviously very different?
Well, I think it has to do with the audience. I wrote the starting end for queer people, specifically to celebrate sexuality in the queer community, and there is a lot of erotica and smut and naughtiness in that book, in the novel that's coming out, and so it's not for everyone. It's going to be appreciated by the people who love that and want to celebrate sex in all its beautiful forms. And so that's what I wrote, and I wrote it specifically to those people. This book I'm definitely writing for people who like horror movies and like end of the world type stuff, because that's what I'm picturing when I'm writing this. I love horror movies, I love sci-fi, and that definitely is the influence on this, the chaos of what would happen at the end of the world if everything fell apart, if society didn't exist, if all that. Yeah, that's what I'm just toying with, just for fun, and it's been so much fun. Yeah.
It is very interesting, isn't it, when you're writing different styles? And I know you and I are sort of like collaborating on something. So, and that's obviously a very different style again. And so switching between different styles, it's a fascinating process, because you kind of have to get your mind out of one thing to the other. But I do find that the way the action works is the same. You've got, I don't know, action in dark fantasy, action in apocalyptic or dystopian type stories works in the same way that action does in a war story, because you've got to keep the reader focused enough on the action so they can see it,
Yep.
but not enough words, not too many words, so that they are like bored.
Agreed. Completely. Yeah.
And I think there's a real difficult balance there, and not everyone's going to like every style of writing either. And I think that's really important to know. It's okay not to like every style, and when you're writing, you just write to one tiny group of people, and that's it. And if you focus your writing on that, you're writing just to them. But obviously, the main person who you're writing for is you, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's cathartic. It's therapeutic. Yeah, it's the creative process is essential. Yeah, I have to be creative. It's who I am. I have to keep writing. I have to play music. I have to do the things, all the stuff. Yep.
So who are the characters that you're writing in this scene? Who are they?
Okay, so this recent scene is I didn't ask you that question about your scene. We'll have to talk about that with your next bit. Okay, all right.
You want to tell me about mine first, or do you want to tell you about yours first? Would you prefer?
Let me just tell you real quick, because this is it's just basically just one person. She's escaping a cult. The start of this book is this girl Agrel, who's just turned 18, 22. Yeah, she's young. She's 18-ish. She's been inducted into this cult that she grew up in, and now she's part of like the higher order, and they've revealed some mysteries to her, and she's like, what the fuck? This is terrible. And she flees and she escapes. And so she's on the journey away from the cult. That's what this all happens, and this is all in her mind, and she's just terrified of what's happened, and they killed her cousin right in front of her. So yeah, so that's who this is. So now back to you, Ray, Raven, You've got guards. We didn't talk about any
Hang
of them.
on, whoa. Hang on a
Yeah.
second. Hang on. I have a question about your character. Wait a second.
Okay.
So you're writing a female character. How does that work for you? What's your thoughts on that? Because go on. You tell me what you think first.
When I first started writing fiction, I didn't want to try and put a personality, no, that's not the word, a stereotype into people. I have met enough people that are so far across every spectrum of personality type and uniqueness that I didn't want to write, I don't know, a Jewish person from New York that sounds exactly like a Jewish person from New York that looks like a Jewish person. I didn't want to put a stereotype into my character that was so like everybody thought. I wanted everybody to be unique. And so I just write my women characters however they seem to be. And if they come off kind of mannish, I don't care. That's part of their personality. And I wouldn't describe them as mannish. I would never say that about my characters, but somebody else might read them. Oh, she's so tough and coarse, and she uses rough language. She's so mannish. I just think she's a badass. And to me, that's I'm just writing my characters. And yeah, I don't want to write a black person that seems overly ethnic or ghetto. That I want people to be who they are. And I think their background is important and lends so much to a character's personality. But I think that who they are is in them, is in the person. The character sort of tells me who they are. My main character in my whole novel, my fantasy, the starting end that I read from first, I never describe what he looks like at all. Nothing, the whole book. So the reader will put whatever they want into the character. I don't describe anything. Not skin tone, not hair length, not anything. Except that everybody thinks he's attractive. People keep thinking he looks good. And that's the only thing I let you know about him.
It's really interesting because I've read lots of different perspectives on it, and there's lots of people who think that if you're female, for example, and you're writing a male character, you have to do lots of research and things on it. And again, if you're male and you're writing from a female character, the same thing, because mistakes can be made in the writing. But I think you're right, because we're all on the spectrum, aren't we, on masculinity and femininity, and you can have very masculine type females and very feminine type males, and I think that it's completely normal regardless. You don't have to be a girly girl or a gamer girl or whatever you want. You know. Yeah,
and it's a shame that any of these terms get used disparagingly. That a femboy, I'm pretty femme, I'm super femme, but some people would take offense at that or use that in a way that means offensively. They mean it offensive. My whole book is all about celebrating. I want to celebrate people. I mean, this new book is all about chaos, but my first book is all about celebrating people, and I put a lot of effort into building those characters for just to be in love with. I totally am in love with every character in my book.
I think you have to be. I apologies for that squelching noise. My dog's munching.
I can't hear anything, but that's all right. He was scampering around in the background a few minutes ago.
Yeah, he's now munching on something, so it's lots of squelching noises. So I apologise. Anyone who doesn't like that. I wrote female character because I felt like I could relate to her probably more. But I wrote a character who is she doesn't care about her person, what she looks like. It's not of interest to her. She's not a masculine female, and she's not uber pretty, which are obviously two stereotypes that tend to happen with those types of characters. Yeah. She's just got other things to think about that are more important than what her hair is doing. the first book starts off with her being a bit fussed about her hair, and there are mentions about her hair and how it is. But as time wears on and things happen to her and she experiences stuff, that goes because her hair is of no consequence. You know, why would her hair be of consequence when her sister's held captive and there's child slaves that are being tortured and she has to find a way to escape a dungeon? You know, hair seems unimportant at that moment. Yeah. So yeah. So she's and in the scene that I read to you, you've got Ray, who is the person who you're in the consciousness of. Raven is she's about 17 in this book roughly. He's around 19. There is some sort of connection between them love-wise, but it's not clear 100%, and it's not overt at all. There's no kissing or anything like that. There's a definite bond between them, and he has a magic power that only he and one other person has, and so he's pretty special. It's central to the story arc. And then there's guards. So the guards, or the soldiers, whatever you want to call them, they are basically children who had been captured from around 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, who were then held captive for several years to harden them up, and then they were put to work as soldiers, and their role as soldiers was to basically lay waste to the land and open the doorways for the real enemy to eventually arrive, because if they have an enemy arriving, they want to make sure that the land is easy to access, shall we say. So they're the characters, and the orange is really important because it's the opposing blue that Ray has, and the colours are quite important in it. So that's where we're going with that.
Are you going to tell us the importance of the colors, or is that going to be a secret for later?
I don't mind saying. It's the colors themselves represent the colors of this sentient being called the Tau, and the Tau has the ability to enable its symbiotic organism to interact with its environment in a way that you can't normally. And what it does is, as it links with the symbiotic creature, it has it feeds off of the chemical signals that the creature has, and the more evil the signals, i.e. the neurotransmitters. So obviously people who experience darker thoughts and are evil probably have different chemical neurotransmitters being sent. The more of those that happen, the more orange it gets, and the less of them, the bluer it gets.
So it's the person that has the feelings that then affects the Tau. Is that what you called it?
The Tau, TAU. Yeah. It actually, so I actually did a little bit of research on science, believe it or not. So there is actually a subatomic particle called a Tau, and it is to do with interactions with fermions and things like that. So and I quite like the name Tau as well. But it is one of these things that is the central role of the book and really important, and only the enemy have it, and a very small handful of other people.
Cool.
And one of them.
Cool.
So, but the ability allows them to wield specific swords that are tuned to it, and also wield a bow. Welcome, Indy.
How you doing?
How are you?
I am absolutely fantastic. I was sitting here watching the show while editing, looking at some stuff, And you all are doing a great job. I had a special request though. I had a question for Adam.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a question for Adam, and then I wanted to pitch something at both of you all because right now you're streaming out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. People are listening to you on Clubhouse, and I know that there are. I wanted to give you an opportunity because I know we talk, but and I don't know if it's ready. If the cake is still in the oven, that's fine. But just for the people that are listening, for people that are picking up on the replay. Um, I'd love for you to share with some of the things that you, Adam, and even Reese are working on that people can start looking forward to. Because one of the things that we're going to do is really start pushing the Clubhouse, both of them, the Book Slam and the Book Slam Extra, and then all of the things that are attached to it. That kind of come from underneath that. So I know that you all are talking about some stuff, and not that I'm trying to turn into the interviewer, but what are some things that some of the people can begin to look forward to? And then with Adam, I have some very specific questions for you, but we'll start with that. And again, if it's too early to give them a glimpse of what's in the pot, what's in the oven, that's fine too. But I mean, you all have told me a lot of amazing. Fun, exciting stuff. And I'd love for you to share it with people, share some of it with people that are out there, And I know I caught you completely off guard. Jules, your favorite.
Oh my God.
No, that's perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Jules is sitting there so still, like, please have him stop speaking. But, it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to give you an opportunity to, because you're doing both of you all do such an amazing job with this. I'd love to give you the opportunity to have people look forward to. We're less now than 45 days from the new year. And 2023 to me is going to be an incredible year. I mean, 2023 is going to be amazing, and I mean that in a very positive, productive way. Because amazing could be getting my legs cut off. So no, I'm not talking about something like that. But I love for you to introduce, at least give them a glimpse.
Yeah.
Of some of
Sure. Adam, do you want to take the lead on this one?
Sure. So one of the things we're doing is we have started our first. Danu Books has started the first. Writing competition, a short story and poetry competition. That's right. We definitely need to talk about that. It just started this month. We're just accepting submissions. It's a $10 submission fee. We have specific guidelines we want everybody to write under. We want to get submissions, and then we're going to make a donation to. We've already made some donations to the Trevor Project, which is a LGBTQ nonprofit. A nonprofit that focuses on LGBTQ suicide prevention, especially amongst youth. So we really love supporting that. So not only are we holding this competition, which is short story and poetry, but also the winners of the short story competition are going to be published in a volume, and that a percentage of sales from that are also going to go to the Trevor Project. So we're just going to keep supporting them. This is the first competition we're doing. The guidelines that we've got are we want your writing to be under 1,000 words. We want it to contain 3 specific themes. 1 is a magnifying glass. 2, the outer rings of Saturn. And 3, a wolf. And you can incorporate that, and you can have those things mean whatever you want. You don't have to use them in those specific words. You can put it in, be as creative as you want.
Can you?
I think I'm going to. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, please.
You lost me just for a second.
Oh no.
A magnifying glass.
Yes. Okay. So
and a wolf.
And a wolf. Yes.
Cool.
And it can be poetry or a short story, as long as it's under 1,000 words.
On any topic. Yep. But we wanted to have a focused theme.
And I know that you all are the Trevor Project, which I'm not actually familiar with. I'd love for you to talk more about that. The Trevor Project, and I know that ties into the community. Because I get lost with, every couple of days they add another letter. But, it's like, I'd love for you to kind of elaborate on that. And you don't have to be a member of that community in order to write.
No, absolutely.
Anybody can write. Okay.
Absolutely.
I just want to make it clear.
Yeah. It's open to everyone and anyone, any age. There's no age restriction.
Any genre. Yep.
Oh, a 5-year-old can write.
Yeah. So
I'm joking.
You can write in any genre. So if you are like a crime author or a poet who wants to write about it all in a sort of like metaphysical type of sense, or if you want to write like an epic poem like Odyssey with those themes in it, or if you want to have those as central items, or if you want to have them as an imagination, or it doesn't matter. What we're looking for are writers who are creative in their writing and who are unique in their style and present it in a way that is just unique to them and interesting. And they can take on it what they want. It doesn't have to be a literal sense. So, for example, the wolf could be an image on the wall. The magnifying glass could be an actual item, and the outer rings of Saturn could be a clue in a crossword. Yeah, or it could be like the name of a person, or it could be a place that you have to go to, or a secret agent code name, or whatever you want. It doesn't matter.
Allow me to interpret or translate for those of us that for the Americans that are watching. She said the wolf could be a image or a picture on the wall. She said wolf. I just want to make sure everybody. I love that accent. I love that accent, Jules. We're slow. We're slow over here, so a picture on the wall. I had to, it took me a second, but I said, "Oh, she means the wall." Okay, but here's a question: What led you all to pick those three topics? Those three is just interesting.
We were hunting to try and find a way of getting it so it was interesting and different for the writers. And we tried doing like a computer generated thing, and it kept coming up with some really weird solution, like options and solutions. So what we did was the three of us decided that we were each going to choose a particular element. So I chose a place, Adam chose an object, and Reese chose a living thing. And that's where you get the outer rings of Saturn, and you get magnifying glass, and you get a wolf.
Oh wow! Okay.
Cool. And the next competition we do will be three different things, and it won't necessarily be a place, an object, and a living thing. We have a whole list of things prepared to do for future competitions, and each one is going to be unique and different and quirky. So yeah, that's what we're going for. And we want to support underrepresented voices totally. Anybody who is hoping to be part of this, we want you to be part of it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Now you said 1,000 words. Is that the max or the minimum?
That's the max.
That's the top. Yeah. This is short story and poem that's not Dante's Inferno. That's too much poetry.
Right. Okay. Now the big question I have is, I write the piece. Actually, two questions. What can I do to increase my chances of winning? And three questions. What can I do to increase my chances of winning? Number two is, who's going to make the determination? And number three is the obvious. What do I get when I win? So
the first thing, in terms of the easy option, like for this, in terms of answering about how the decision is made, because it's my company, I'm not judging. And I don't think it's fair that I judge. I can oversee the judging and just make sure it's fair, but that's it. So Reese and Adam are going to do the judging, and it's going to be based off a specific scoring system that's going to look at creative content, style, you know, the style of wording, how it's formed, all those kind of things. And it's going to be the same standard is going to be used for all of the entries that we get. So it's going to be standardized. So there's not going to be like, oh, well, Adam thinks this is really nice, but I think this is really nice. Oh, but Reese thinks that's really nice. It's going to be to a set standard. So that's quite straightforward to answer.
And $1 million?
Pardon? Not yet. The plan is to have this as an ongoing competition that runs 3 or 4 times a year, at least every quarter. I think that would be fair at the moment.
Very cool.
And yeah, so if you miss this chance, then you'll have another opportunity, you know, for different topics to write about. You said about what do they get when they win. So at the moment, we are doing a published piece of work, which we will put on sale on website, and I'm going to speak to you and see if we can get it on sale at the Book Slam bookstore as well, if possible. And also possibly get it into some bookshops as well, if possible. It depends on how many entries we get and the quality of work we receive, obviously, in terms of the bookshops. But that's going to be the main place so far. And I've completely forgotten what your first question was. I'm really sorry.
That's no problem. Jules, I apologize, it's distracting. You have a very big mouse behind you. I'm joking.
Sorry.
I'm joking.
I know you are, sorry.
He has mice. People on Clubhouse, she has mice.
I'm not even going to correct that. I'm just going to let everyone on Clubhouse think. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that. I'm not gonna correct it. I'm just gonna let everyone on Clubhouse think I've got a really giant mouse running around my room behind me.
It's a huge roach. No, that's cool. No. The size of a dog. No, but that's cool. Like I said, it sounds exciting. You know, I guess another question. One of the I guess things to think about. Oftentimes, you know, when people run these contests, the whole thing is, I guess a good word is enigmatic. You know, it's a mystery. Nobody knows, and all of a sudden you win, and you don't know if you beat everybody else out or if it's the same accolade, the same, you know, congratulations they're sending it to the 3 people that competed. What makes this? I mean, I think the publishing deal is huge. For people that don't know, publishing is not cheap. I'm sitting here editing a book right now, 200-page book right now. Publishing is not cheap. It's not cheap. It's not inexpensive. In my world, those are two very distinct differences. But what makes this contest? First of all, does the contest have a name? And then what makes this contest different from all the other writing contests that are out there? And Adam is laughing.
Yeah, I didn't say the name of it. You're totally right about that.
No, it's fine. Go ahead, Adam.
The Danu Literary Awards.
Okay.
After Danu Books, the publishing company. Yes.
Wow.
So,
okay. Sounds distinguished.
DANU, Danu Literary Awards. Yeah. I like that title.
I do too. And what makes this different from a lot of the other things, a lot of the other contests that, I mean, and Adam, if you haven't experienced it, we get hit on by a lot of people with contests. I know here in the States, it's all the time. Everybody has a different contest and they're promoted, hey, win this and you can be an award-winning author. What makes this different from a lot of those other contests that are out there?
I think what we really want to do is celebrate writing. I want people to you were asking what will help people win. I want awesome writing. I want it to be polished and clean, and I want it to read so well. And that's what I want to do. I want to celebrate writing. I think that's what we're doing. We want people to submit. We want to find the best things that were written, and we want to publish it into a book so that people can read it. I know that other contests have done things. You get money if you do this, whatever. I would rather make a donation, and I'll give more description of the Trevor project in a second. But I think that getting the words on paper out to other people. Hey, here's a compilation of not a CD of music. It's a compilation of writing that people did, and it's all short stories. It's easy to digest. It's been vetted by other authors who were really impressed with it, and that's why they're releasing it. I want to celebrate writing. That's what I want to. That's what I really want to celebrate. So I'm hoping that that's a part.
And you know, it's funny. It's interesting that you say that because, and I can't speak to the other contest as far as completely intelligently because I don't know the hearts and minds of the people behind it. But to hear you speak, the sincerity in your voice, where you are truly interested or you know, concerned, or you really care about the writer and the writing styles and, you know, getting the word out there. Because like I've told many people, you can have the greatest book in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it really won't matter. So no, I actually, again, I applaud what you all are doing. The Book Slam Xtra, I love the format, Jules. I love the format, Adam. It's great. It kind of feels like, even with the books, the extra part, it kind of extra, you know, it just really, it's just really cool. What are there any other things that you all are doing? And I do want you to kind of elaborate on the Trevor project.
Okay. Yes. Well, yeah, so, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, not only do we mentioned Maxime, who she's they're still hanging out. So thank you for hanging out still, because we know you're there. We have scheduled guests to be on the Book Slam for, you said there's 45 days left in the month or something, or in the year.
Yeah.
We've got people scheduled through December and into January who are going to be on the show with us. I'm totally excited by the interest that people have had in this. Yeah. So that's awesome. So what were you going to say, Jules? What were you going to say? I didn't mean to interrupt. Oh, Jules, were you going to say something a minute ago?
Oh, sorry. No, sorry. It cut out a second. Sorry. No. I just said, no, go ahead. That's all I said.
Oh, okay. And yeah, just a little bit more information about the Trevor Project. So again, it's a nonprofit that focuses on LGBTQ suicide prevention. It's incredibly prevalent for people in the queer community to be kicked out of their families and lose their communities when they come out, and that can be very early for some people, 10, 12 years old, 14. And so the homeless community of America, houseless, the displaced community of America, consists of a large percentage of queer folk, and a lot of them are very young. And this nonprofit, the Trevor Project, just helps keep them from killing themselves, you know, because it's a very common, horrible, heartbreaking thing. So yeah, so that's why we believe in it. That's why we support it. And yeah, we're always looking for queer voices of authors and people from every nationality. I think our friend is in Hungary today, who's on the call with us. So that's going to be so exciting. We've talked to people in Thailand. The Philippines. We've talked to people from all over it's so international. I love what the Book Slam is doing. I love it.
Cool. I do have one final question. Oh, go ahead, Jules. Go ahead. I didn't see you froze for a second.
No, I've actually got a couple of the posters for the competition. If you want me to just display them on the screen for people. Hang on. These are on the background. So if you're able to do that, that'll be amazing. Because I'll probably break the computer or something.
That's not it.
My connection just.
That's your book, isn't it, Indy?
I lost you first.
Okay. You're saying right
the
here.
Background. That's it.
That's one. Let's do this because you put in it. That actually should have been an overlay, but that's.
Oh, sorry.
That's no. Do me a favor. Oh, Jules, go ahead and upload it under overlay. Under overlays.
It's fine.
And yeah.
No worries.
But no, it sounds amazing. Now, Adam, I do have as we're making the transition, because I know you have a guest waiting. I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
The word queer. Okay, I am curious because queer has so many different connotations. Years ago, it was just strange. Okay. Today, many, I was speaking to someone the other day, and we looked up all of the different, I don't know what you would call them, the different, there were people that love people, but they aren't sexually attracted to them, all the different loves, all the different whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The whole
Right, the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
Thank you. But when it comes to queer, how would you define? Because I know bisexual, and I know that people use the term poly and all this other type of stuff. But how would you define queer?
To me, queer, you're right. I think queer meant strange for a long time, and I think that's why it was applied to homosexuals and people that used to call themselves transsexual or transvestite. Those were early terms that were used, and I think queer was applied in a derogatory manner. And at some point, the queer community embraced the term and realized, you know what, this can be a badge of honor, and it takes the power away by saying I'm queer. Then they can't be like, oh, there's a queer dude over there. It diminishes the power of the insult. But yeah, I think it's mostly about, to me, queer. I use it. I'm 40. I use queer as an overarching term, and maybe there are younger people who are using it slightly different than me. For me, when I say queer, I mean anybody who's not heteronormative, who's not in a straight relationship, heterosexual, standard man, woman. I basically use queer for everybody else: bisexual, pansexual, asexual, everything. And I totally recognize and appreciate and celebrate every single one of those different branches of the gender identity spectrum and sexuality spectrum. And for me, the word queer just is the umbrella that covers all of that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Because I've seen it attached recently to different things, like a person, and I would love for you to introduce the correct term to me, but a person that is interested in male or men or women. Some people, to me, it was almost synonymous with bisexual. I don't know.
To me, there are the sexuality preference terms, I guess you'd call them. To me, there are some that are possessive, some that are like reflective. Pansexual, demisexual, those kind of terms refer to, even bisexual, refer to terms of I'm sort of open to my lovers. I just need to be loved. And it doesn't really matter who the person is. It could be a man or woman if I'm bisexual. Pansexual person, the spectrum's even broader. Whereas if I'm gay, I only want to have sex with men. I only want to, or be in a relationship, even if it's not sexual. I only want men. So that to me is possessive. If you're homosexual, that's a very specific. I need a certain thing. Whereas the other terms, bisexual, they're more. I need love, and I'm willing to love a lot of different people. And I think that's perfect. I think my buddy Fozzie is as far gay as you can possibly be. He can only like men. He even told me once, and I'm totally gonna throw him under the bus here. He told me once that if he puts on like a naughty video and like it's like two hot men and like a girl comes like prancing in to get involved, he's like, "Oh my God, start respecting her! Stop this!" He's just as gay as you can possibly be. And the spectrum is vast. It's just huge, and I just think that's beautiful, and I celebrate that.
Cool. And I know, Jules, you are a huge supporter. And it's interesting because you are married, But is it you and your husband are huge supporters? And not that you have to disclose that information, but what kind of inspired you to be a part of to actually take that charge on? Because I know that's something that even in our discussions and things, the Book Slam Extra, these were things that were very important to you. So what kind of inspired you to actually be a part, take on the role that you have?
As in with the LGBTQ community?
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay, so when I was at school, there was a girl in my year group who came out when we were 12. And I'd only just found out that girls had periods, like not long before this, which was a huge shock to me. And my instant reaction when I found this out was, okay. I literally had no reaction at all. I wasn't bothered by it at all.
Right.
And then I found it really weird that other people were. I didn't understand why there was an issue, because I still don't understand why there's an issue. And so I ended up becoming friends with her. I overheard the gossip when I was in a maths class, and the children were sitting behind me, and they were whispering and gossiping about it and how disgusting it was and stuff like this. And I just remember sitting there going, I don't get it. I don't get what the problem is. So I actually went and sought her out and became friends with her. And so as she was walking around school and being called dyke and queer and all the insults, and I know queer obviously isn't an insult now, but it was then, and everything else, and being spat at and tripped over, I was with her the entire time. And I stayed friends with her for the entire duration of my time at school. So I was exposed to it at quite a young age in that sense. And when I remember when I went home and spoke to my parents about it and sort of queried, why is this wrong? Because I don't understand why it is. The response I got from both my parents was very different. My mum was just like, meh. Some people just think that, I won't worry about it. But then my dad was very much, she's too young to know. And then again, my reaction to that was, well, how could she possibly be too young to know what she thinks? I don't get that either. And at 12 years old, I was already questioning what the issues were. And I just didn't get what the issues, I just didn't understand it. And so from that moment, I became very much aligned with, the community in that sense, and being 100% in support of people in that community and people who are not in the community, but also people who support it. I don't see the issue that other people see. I don't understand why it's an issue that if two consenting people or three consenting people, whoever, would like to have, a fumble under the sheets or whatever, I don't see why that, first of all, is any of my business. And, it doesn't have any direct effect on me whatsoever. I could walk past someone's house and never know what they're doing. And second of all, love is love, surely. If someone loves another person and they're both consenting people, then that love is true and real. And so that's where I stand on it. So I'm very much, and also sexuality is a fluid thing as well. Sexuality isn't like set, so particularly for women. So women tend to go through lots of transitions in their sexuality, and that's quite normal. And so we tend to sort of pigeonhole it into specific groups, when actually it's not actually pigeonholed. It's just fluid. I suppose it's a little bit like gender in a way, that like what Adam and I were talking about at the beginning, where you've got women who are more masculine and men who are more feminine. It's just the fluidity of the way that we see ourselves and each other. And I think all of it's beautiful. And I think that the rainbow should be celebrated 100%. There you go. Yay.
Cool. It's interesting because Adam and I are both American. And every now and then, we'll even on the show, we'll get in on the topic of not only sexuality, but race. And this country, and it's funny, I know you and I have talked about religion in the UK, and you introduced some stuff to me that I thought that the UK had, I thought was like everybody was holy. It's just, everybody's wrong, I just, because here, you understand, this country it descended from from Europe. And over here, the religious thing is, in a lot of cases, it's hypocritical, but it's very, it's a major deal. And I think what's interesting, especially in listening to Adam speak, and it just put me in this frame of mind. It takes me back to slavery, and it's funny because while Adam may have been condemned 100 years ago, when a slave master would sodomize his slave, the biggest male slave, in front of the rest of them, to show his dominance.
Yeah.
To me, how can you condemn Adam?
Yeah, exactly.
And call yourself, call anything related to Adam or anyone in that spectrum, against religion, when you are literally raping someone else. So no, it's just fascinating to think about that, because it is. And then you got we can't even talk about Catholics, the priests that are notorious for, child molestation. I mean, that's just what it is. And it's gender on gender molestation. You don't hear a lot about priests, molesting little girls. It's mostly. Huh?
Yeah, you're right. I said it does happen, but yeah, you're right.
Right. It's like the other thing is just much. I don't know if it's more prevalent or it comes out. I don't know. But it's just.
Yeah.
I think it's more accepted for them to do it to girls. I know it sounds awful, but I think that rape as a thing has always been used throughout ages in terms of a sense of power. So whenever there was wars, one of the things that the soldiers were allowed to do as part of their reward for winning the battle was to go and rape. So it's rape and pillage.
Right.
And rape and pillage the towns that they went to. And that was their reward, and that was allowed and encouraged because it helped soldiers stay, focused on the battle and stuff. And I think because rape against girls and women has been so normalized in society, when it's in the news, it's less newsworthy than when it's against boys. And that doesn't take away from the boys or the girls. It's just, I think that it's just normalized more for women.
Yeah, I think in general society doesn't care about boys. I think that's pretty normal. I think that we want boys to become men, but we don't care about the boys at all. I think that I think it is clear in horror movies. There are only a few horror movies that attempted to make the boys victims, and those movies fall flat. You don't believe that they're victims because you don't care if they die, and it's just a total natural thing. But you see them as victims. You see Psycho in the shower. Her, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Oh my God, I can't. Anyway, the actress. Yeah, so she's getting stabbed in the shower. The woman in the shower is scary, but as soon as they put a man in a shower, you're just like, am I gonna see his dick? What's happening here? Like, you don't care at all. And then he gets stabbed, and you're just kind of like laughing along with it. And I think it's a total subconscious thing that's in all of us. We don't even care about boys. Nobody cares that boys are getting raped by priests. No, not no one. You know what I mean? I'm exaggerating for.
I know you are.
Dramatic effect.
I mean, just to bring it back to religion, just very quickly, in terms of, why the UK and the USA are different in the way that they see religion. We are sort of a nationalist Christian country. Okay, as a name type thing, not because as we actually are. Only because our king is head of the Protestant Church, the Church of England. And because of that, obviously, we can't escape it. However, when I went to school, and it was a school of around 2,000 children, I literally knew of one person who actually went to church. I had no friends who believed in God. None. And yeah, so there are people who are religious in this country. I'm not going to say that there isn't, because that's not true. There is. But particularly my age and below, we have no interest in it. And the reason why is because the religion in your country is as old as your country. Whereas we've had the same religion in our country since before King Alfred, or around King Alfred's time, which was a very long time ago, about 1,000 years or so. And so, and he was the one who brokered peace with the Danes, and the Danes then, the Vikings, they who settled, they became religious, and they integrated within the rest of the communities that they live. But yeah, it's because we've had it for so long. And I think, like a lot of things, like civil wars as well, we've had loads of civil wars. And, there's lots of things that we've done that have been going on for a lot longer than what the USA has. So I think that's possibly where, there's possible apathy towards religion. Yeah. So.
Well, I think you also have to consider the way that America is set up versus England. You've got the UK, which is a series of countries, but that's kind of like New England. You said that we evolved from that. New England is only 5-6 states or something like that, but people that live in Maine are way different than the people that live in Connecticut. Like, we have a lot of different people, and so I think that there are certain regions of this country that are much more like the UK, that are much more apathetic towards religion. Where I am in Oregon, there are a few churches in this town, but the parking lots are almost always empty, even on Sunday mornings. Yeah. It's just, this area is one of the least religious in the country, and compared to Atlanta, is that where you are, Indy?
I'm in Atlanta. Yeah.
Yeah, the South definitely is the religion is a major part of culture down there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. If I walk outside and I throw a rock, I probably wouldn't hit an atheist. I might hit an agnostic. Now, when you break it down, or am I hitting someone I did have one other question, since we're just kind of rambling. Did you all have another guest?
We have got Maxine, who has been extremely patient in Clubhouse.
That's fine. I did, but here in the South, it is very Christian. Very Christian. Like I said, now are they Baptist, Episcopalian, one of these Adventists, and one of these other denominations? That's totally different. But when it comes to just overall Christianity, Protestants in particular, it's this country is at least on the surface. At least on the surface, it's, I'm not saying everybody attends church every week, but that foundation for many Americans is there. Now, what's funny is you're talking about the evolution of your country. America, many people are stepping away from church. And I'll be honest, the challenge that I have with that, and I've always said this, whether, for people who did go to church, it set a certain moral compass, of, for example, you were talking about your friend that was ridiculed and so forth. The same thing could have happened here, but for a number of the people that were doing it, they would have done it, but something in them would have told them that was wrong. That's not to say they would have done it, but a part of them would have, because it talks about loving your neighbor and So I felt to a certain degree that was wrong, unless they were convicted with the belief that this person is a what would we call it, a cursed, this person just this is hellbound and there's no saving them, that type of thing. You do have people like that.
Yeah,
But
sure.
a part of many of them, that's the benefit of Christianity, in my opinion.
But
Or
I think the mistake is made in the sense where people think that people who are atheists, either strong atheist or agnostic, actually don't have a moral compass. And that's
no, I'm not. I'm definitely not saying
I'm
that.
not saying that you're saying that, but I think a lot of people do think that, and I think that there's a query over how morally corrupt atheists actually are, and actually we're not. But I can't speak for all atheists because obviously we're all completely different. The only thing that unites us is the fact that we just have a disbelief. But in terms of morality, it's more about we just know what's right. We just instinctively know. You learn what's right and wrong when you're very young.
Like what Indy was just saying. The people who make that insult, but then know on the inside, I shouldn't be doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, it's. Sorry, go on.
I was just like I said, it's. I mean, it is something that no, I'm not saying atheists don't have a moral compass. I'm not saying agnostic, because I think there's a certain part of our human being, where society or our community or our families, whatever the case is, at some point, right and wrong is somewhat instilled in you. Now, what that right and wrong is subjective, but based on where you are and the things that were right, at one time may not feel right today, but there is a certain degree of right and wrong that's learned in the community. I think it's pushed a little further only because the whole thing with the Christian movement is, like I say, love thy neighbor, but a part of you is saying I hate this person, but it's that battle within yourself. And I think in a lot of cases that actually saves a lot of people in the long run. And I stress, in the long run. This is a person that might hate someone today. 50 years from now, they might love them. But it's an internal battle that they might have been struggling with. So, but I apologize for taking over just jumping in and taking over. I saw you all, and I was sitting here, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to jump in. But,
You're welcome.
So I do apologize, but you all are doing a great job. And I do want to address, I don't know if she's on right now, but Patrice, she asked me a question about the book slam, and she said, when she came in, they were talking. This is a person that is, she's a Christian, an author. And one of the things I tell people about the book slam in general is that we celebrate all genres of literature.
Yep.
It's. I have news for you. I've heard literature, and I don't. Oh, this is just me. So but I've heard literature. I've heard literature on here that I don't. That I may not necessarily purchase, and I've been open about that. Who was that? Adam. One of you all might remember. I can't. Darius. Darius writes urban novels. Okay, his urban literature that he writes. A number of other people have come on have done that as well. That's not my particular thing. Okay. I've actually typed that stuff for people. I've edited for stuff for people, and that's not even fun for me. But there is a market for it. And it is art. And therefore I appreciate it. And when Darius comes on and he actually reads his piece, the context it's brought into a context that I can, my appreciation level is that much greater.
Yeah.
Because it's his story, But we celebrate all forms of literature. If you come in and just happen to be talking about bisexuality, or when what was her name when she came on, because her show's working to get her show up, but when came on talking about sexuality back last month.
Yes, I loved that.
Yeah, but or we're talking about racism, or about love, or hate, whatever the case is. It's these are conversations I think that need to be had anyway. I'm heterosexual, but I love being able to have a intelligent, peaceful dialogue with Adam. And so it helps me to learn because he's a great guy. So it helps me to appreciate that. But it helps me to appreciate, because I tell people the best example or influence that we can make in anybody's life is the life that we live. So if you are a good person and you are loving life, then that's going to make a greater statement than anything that you may act than most things that come out of your mouth, because that's the true testament. They talk about integrity, and that's when people aren't looking. What are you doing? So I celebrate what both of you all are doing. I thank you so much. Jules, I know that I've invaded your space. I'm sorry.
It's fine. No, you're very welcome. And it's nice to actually have a conversation. It's just give me an idea of what we could talk about next week, actually. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Really talk about the mouse that keeps running in your back. I love what you guys are doing. I really do. I really do. I love the book slam because it presents the opportunity to authors to do things that they aren't doing. The book slam on Tuesday, you can actually come on there and speak. And you're learning how to, that oral presentation. They don't get that opportunity because they're not all poets.
Right.
Most of them are regular everyday authors, and they just don't have those type of platforms. And then they come on here, and Jules will interview you, and Adam will be there, and you are going to, you will divulge all of your information.
I like to pick away at the brain.
It's going to dig everything out.
Absolutely. Yeah,
but
don't be scared, Maxine. It's okay. You're not really zombie.
Look, go ahead. Is Maxine going to come on here? You're going to speak to her through Clubhouse?
She's going to be on Clubhouse.
Okay.
And yeah, but before we do that, I just want to show you the poster.
I'm going.
And I want to say what, in response to what Indy just said, what you just said. I talk up the book slam to all authors that I come in contact with over social media. Everybody, I talk it up to everyone. That the benefit of reading out loud for other authors has been world changing for me. Yep. I tell everybody to try and get on.
Every book I've written, especially What If White People Were Slaves, I read that book every chapter. After every chapter, I read it out loud to a friend of mine. And you're able to hear things and see things, and you're like, okay, you know what? Maybe I should have said this.
Yep.
So you're able to make those alterations, those modifications, because when you speak, it's just so cool, it's just so cool. But anyway,
fellow writers, do what Indy just said. Do what he said. Find somebody to read aloud your work to.
Yes.
That is so awesome. He's got it. Yep.
Yeah, when you read out loud, it just places it in. It places it in context with. I see Melody. It places in context with people that are buying your book, of course, but it also helps to place it in context for you, because you'll hear it and you're like, oh my God, yeah, I did it. So anyway, but yeah, thank you, Adam. I agree. Thank you, Jules. I'm going to go ahead and step back to the background. And let you have your conversation with
Max.
Who is it?
Max.
Maxine. Well, knock yourself out. Tell her I said hello.
Oh, we will. I think she can hear you, so it should be all right.
All right. Go for
Thanks,
it.
Cindy.
Right.
All right. what I'm going to do, I'm going to just quickly show the poster. This is for the competition. And for those of you who are interested, the email address to submit it is on there too. And there's also a PayPal, what do you call them? QR code that you can use that will go directly to the Danny Books PayPal account. And obviously all of those transactions will be completely transparent, and I will share them with my co-host as well as Reese, who is not with us today, but she'll be part of that too. So there'll be no hiding any of the money that comes in and no hiding any of the money that goes out. So you can rest assured to be safe. In terms of the email, I think the angle of it is a bit. I'm going to show a different poster. This is another poster that has been done. So I'm going to put in the chat actually for people. Right the actual email address. So hang on a second. So the email address to submit to is danucompetition@gmail.com. Nice and simple.
I can't pull it all together.
Okay. And the closing date is because you put it on American date, didn't you, Adam? Which is the 12th or the 5th. But UK are going to be like, whoa, that's May.
Yeah,
so tell us about the date. What is the date?
December 5th. December 5th. Yes, December 5th. I should have spelled out December. You're right.
You're all right.
The 5th
Maybe
of December.
Another poster that has that.
There you go.
There we
that's
go.
That's when.
That's
Submit.
Submit, please.
We want stuff.
Yeah, we want to submit to you. Yeah, we do. And we want to get you published. And we want you to be classed as an award-winning author, which you'll have as an accolade, as well as having your work published. And and also donating some money to an amazingly good cause. I'm very excited about that. I think should we invite our very, very patient guest on?
Thank you so much for waiting. Oh my gosh.
Let me just invite her to speak. Hang on a second. There we go. So I'll just send her a little invite. Hopefully she'll come on in a minute. Maxine, when you're ready to talk, you can just unmute yourself. Keep your phone volume. Oh no, because you're on. Hang on.
The mute button is the bottom right corner. Just push that button and it should let you talk. It's always confusing. This app is a little confusing.
Yeah. So what we'll do, she might have stepped away for a moment, so we'll just leave her for a moment. So when she's kind of ready, she can just say hello and her voice will be heard and we will listen. I think it's really important, isn't it? Indeed, well, some really fascinating topics there in terms of religion and how religion differs across the globe, as well as different communities of people and sexuality of people as well, and how all of that is really important to actually listen to, and not just have one singular perspective on it. And I think each day we try and learn about each other, and I think that's really important, because if you do that, then you become part of the community in terms of trying to support one another rather than one of the people who are fighting against it. What's your thoughts about all of that? I'm quite interested to hear your thoughts on this.
I think that old saying rings true, that it takes all sorts of people to make the world go round, or whatever. That
for sure.
I could never be an accountant. I don't have the number capacity for that. But some people do that really well. Some people thrive.
That's true.
I love writing words, and some people don't have that strength. I think it takes all of us. Right. I think that religion appeals to some people, and it doesn't appeal to others. I think that most people are on the sexuality, to talk about that. I think on the spectrum somewhere, I think more people are further towards the middle than they realize, but society makes them feel they have to be a certain way. And so I think that it takes all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of going back to our first topic, which is to do with action. I think just like that, you need to think of how to incorporate, culture into stories, and that culture feeds into how your characters react to things and how your characters respond to the environment and how they are as people and what they think. And so part of that writing process is developing that culture. And it's too easy just to sort of dip into one culture and then, unless you're obviously writing something very specific to do with that culture. If you're doing fantasy, I think by just limiting yourself to, I don't know, say the Vikings, you're only seeing it from almost like a particular perspective. And unless you're talking to people who are either descendants or people who have that as part of their culture, or who are historians, or people who are theologians even, who know the gods to do with the Viking lives, then I think it's very difficult to just focus on that. But then I think you then have that very fine line between appreciation and appropriation, and it's finding that right balance so that you don't step across that line. And I think that's the difficulty, isn't it? Maxine, Max, are you available? I've just seen her mic's gone now unmuted. Hang on 1 second. 1 second. Hang on. Okay, right. I hope this works because I've turned my phone up on loud so that your voice can be heard. So we want to hear from you. Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay. Hi.
Hi. It's so lovely to hear from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, what do you want to know? I can tell a lot of things.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself as an author, and have you written anything, and what have you written, and what you think of the conversation so far, and anything at all.
It's been long. Just put it that way. So I'm a queer author of queer erotic romance. I mainly write MM and MMF, polyam, bisexual. I have various, books and works in progress. And I've been writing for 3-4 years now. Before I wrote much younger, right, as a teenager and as a young adult. But then there was a long pause when I basically had life happening and building a career and stuff. And yeah, I'm Gen X, so I'm not 20 whatever. And I've published 4 books so far, and I have more in the making for 2023.
Yay.
And I'm gonna publish my 4th one in December.
Nice.
So far the published works are called Fall, which is people say it's my debut novel, but reading reviews, let's say this is a great debut or a very bad one, and read a book. It's not my debut novel. I don't publish in order. People maybe ought to know, and I pre-write. That means that the book that I finished last year is going to be published in January, my dark fantasy polyam book. What else? I'm a pantser, so I'm an absolute pantser. That means there is not an ounce of planning, nothing. So the way my brain works and my writing process is that I see movies in my head, and when the movie starts, that's when I start writing, and I write until the movie plays.
Oh, yes, I'm clapping. You can't see me, but I'm clapping because that's kind of what I do. So that's so exciting because most people do loads and loads of planning, and I'm just like, I'm not a complete pantser where I don't have nothing written. But I have a vague idea of roughly what's happening, but that's it. But it is literally in my head, and I just write as I go.
There is nothing for me, so I literally don't see anything.
That's amazing.
Besides can have scenes popping up and say this is going to happen like towards maybe in the middle or the end, but I don't know when it's going to happen. So I set off with the characters and I write whatever they're doing, they're saying, when they stop playing, obviously I stop writing. So I have like around 8 unfinished, well, not unfinished, I would say dormant work in progress. So I don't know. A book can last 3 years as it can be written in 3 months. It will absolutely depend on how the characters are playing. So if we go back to my published works, because then I have Fall, and I have a trilogy set in ancient Rome, and that trilogy started with a short story. It literally started with one scene, the first one in book 1, and I said I'm just going to write this scene down because it looks great in my head, and then from then on, the characters wouldn't shut up, and I wrote the trilogy over years.
Amazing. That's amazing.
So yeah, that's basically how I write. Want to find me, or people want to find me, I'm most active on Twitter, but I also have accounts on all the social media. I'm a one-person enterprise, so that means I do everything. And I have obviously helpers, beta readers, art readers, critic partner, wonderful writing and author friends. Obviously, I've met over the years. I've been on social media. So I live in Hungary, which means I'm Hungarian French. And I live in Hungary right now. That means I am pretty much, geographically isolated from meeting my author friends who are mostly British and from the States and from Australia too. So that's quite funny. I have time zone problems. I have publishing problems because Amazon doesn't deliver proof copies to Hungary. So I am a poor,
That's
indie
annoying.
author who is trying to get a copy. That is not possible. So the only way I can proof check my paperbacks is publishing them in silence.
Oh, that's so difficult.
And having author copies sent to me. But I mean, my readers sort of know. So I always put a caveat, I'm saying, be careful with the paperback because I published it and I need to wait 10 days until I get a copy from Germany. So it's the logistics are very different. You can't, you have to go through these loops when you're not UK, American, or Canadian. But I think, there's quite a few of us who publish like this. Yeah, and my books are on Kindle Unlimited, because I went with that choice from the start. And I'm self-published from the start. There's no way I'm going to deal with anything traditional. And that's not going to happen either. So that's not a goal for me. Yeah, so that's very much in a nutshell who I am and what I'm doing.
Well,
ask anything you want.
Well, we're kind of talking about action scenes in our book today, and I wondered if you have an action scene that you'd be happy to share with us, so that we can talk about the difference, because obviously we all write uniquely, and it's very interesting to see how action scenes are written in different books. So that would be awesome to hear that. And whilst you're kind of finding that, what is your Twitter handle? And I will post it on the.
Everywhere where I am. I mean, I have a link tree in my Twitter bio, but the Twitter handle is Maxim Jazz. Just the way, my whatever this clubhouse handle is. My handle is everywhere the same.
I'll type it to you.
If you find my Twitter, then you actually go to my link tree, and you have all my social media thing there. I mean, I have a TikTok.
That's cool.
Because I have to remain confidential, because everything that I am and that I'm writing conflicts with my country and my day job.
Of course,
I don't have a face. I mean, you can probably see on Clubhouse my mouth and my hair. This is as far as I'm going to go to share.
Oh, no, you're fine. That's fine. We don't want you to put yourself at risk at all. It's absolutely fine.
That has huge implications for me.
Of course.
So so I have action scenes. I mean, depending, I'm going to do the erotica writer corny joke, would you like some, action in the bed sheet? So obviously my books are full of like sex scenes.
Action.
We love sexy writing.
there is different types of action. I've written a sort of like a battle action, and Adam's written slightly, but you're obviously writing different action, and that's fine. It's all action.
I'm writing all sorts of actions. So in fall, you have the beginning, which is the boys when the boys meet in fall, they're running. So that's action, right? In fall, I have a rescue of horses from fire from a burning circus. So you can see these are things that I marked whilst you were talking, so I can actually read them.
You
From
choose.
my fantasy, which comes out next in 2023, I have like a beginning of a battle scene. Now, I'm writing all these different, subgenres, whatever. I don't like to use these words for writing like genre, subgenre, but let's say that in my nebulous genre, which I call queer erotic romance, but it's a lot of other stuff. The main focus is on the relationships and the love and the sex. But I will write the battle scene, but I'm not going to write it like Tolkien or any other D&D writer when you see the swords gleaming and whatever. So yeah, you will see it, but the emotion is more about the people in that battle. The two lovers who are afraid for each other. So that is something like this. In the Roman trilogy, I have a couple of scenes which are very short, but they are. I can't give you the battle scenes away from the book 3 because that's some of them are spoilers, but I can read one of those. And yeah, so I don't know, take your pick. All these are sort of action scenes and depict an action, and I'm happy to read any of them. The Roman ones are shorter. The beginning of fall, I would say that's a 3-minute read if I stop mid-chapter, and the one in the fantasy one is basically 2.5 pages, so up to you.
Well, do you know what? We don't tend to dictate to our authors, what they can and can't read.
Oh,
So,
Jules, you went muted all of a sudden.
oh, I don't know why. Can you hear me now?
What? Oh, hello. Oh, we lost you.
I'm here. I'm still here.
Hey, Maxine. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Her microphone just went dead. She's trying to talk and figure it out.
Like my microphone.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
I work in technology in my day job, and much as I love technology and I hate it. There you go.
I'm going to pass it over to Adam just in case my mic goes again. But Adam, can you hear me now? No.
Yeah, I can.
Oh, you can hear me, Maxine. Adam, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. Okay, that's good. So we don't tend to dictate to our authors what they can and can't read. You literally can read whatever you want. So if you feel that you have a particular scene that fits with what we've been talking about, bearing in mind, you don't have to just come here the once. You are welcome to be a returning author. So this doesn't have to be a one-off opportunity. So if you have several scenes that you would like to read, but you only get a chance to read one, but you would like to come back and you've got other scenes from other things that you would like to share with us or talk to us about, then you are very welcome to be another guest with us. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
We could be like you're kind of linked to other countries abroad.
I mean, I don't mind any of them, but we're short of time. I can pick one of them.
Adam, you choose.
What? How much time do we have left? Do we have enough time to?
We've got about 10 minutes. Yeah, about that.
Okay, so let's read 10 minutes worth. That'll be.
Okay, well, I can. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to read you one from fall, which is a modern one, which is The Rescue from the Fire, right? And then I read you a shorter scene from the Romans. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We can compare. I mean, my style is I have a style. People love it or hate it. There is no middle ground. But I am not writing for people. I'm writing for myself and my readers. So you can feel free to hate.
No, I agree. I think we should be writing for ourselves.
I only write third-person cast. That is something that happened from the beginning, and I'm not changing it. But thoughts are in the first person, and I'm going to try to adapt my voice so you can actually sort of distinguish when there is an inner thought. Because also it's multi-POV to a point that it's going to be head hopping. So if you're into that thing, thing, that's your drug, then great. If not, then you're gonna suffer now. So.
Okay.
Okay, to put this into context for fall, very quickly, it's a love story between a med student and a trapeze artist. And we, in this particular part of the story, the circus, which is sort of inside the city, so it's like an urban circus where this guy works, has their apartments right next door. And so when we get into this scene, we have Doug, who is the trapeze artist, sleeping in his bed, and he just got a kitten because at this stage of the book they are not, they have just sort of broken up with the ally, with the love interest. Okay, so just to put you into context, he lives in the same the same building with the other artists who are also sort of his family. So Gina is the sister and Zia is his niece, right? And then on the bottom of the building lives his mother. Okay? Then I start?
Go for it. Yep, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So here we go. Glowing, mewing, his hand trying to chase him. Shut up. He pried his eyes open, blinking against the dark. Too dark. The acrid smell of smoke invading his nose and his mouth. What? The kitten jumped on him and he clutched it to his bare chest. Still in his sweatpants, he rushed to the door, barefoot, banging on Gina's door, the staircase thick with smoke. Gina, wake up! Sounds of running, her wide eyes, Zia clinging to her robe. Get out, fire! Pulling her by her robe, Zia in her pajamas, the others are already rushing down the stairs. Mama in her door, her eyes going to him as he grabbed her hand, pulling her outside. The wailing of sirens, and they turned, their eyes on the flaming sky, the circus ablaze, the flames licking their roof. His eyes going to the raging inferno, the desperate shrieking maze of the horses above that steady roar. Hold the cat. Zia's eyes wide, holding the kitten tight. Gina grabbed his arm. No, Doug! The horses! I have to get them out. No! She cried as he wrenched his arm out, rushing to the back door, barefoot, his hands searching for the keys in his, finding them, almost dropping, trembling. Pulled the door open and ran across the yard, flames above, rolling the ceiling. Daniel and the horses, wild, their eyes bulging. He tore his halter down, entering the stall, the horse stilling, trembling. Slipped his arm, smoke and flames eating at his lungs, his hair, his skin. Come on, let's go. Leading him out, opening the other stalls, the horses following Django, the silence blaring outside, insane heat licking at him, their coats, soot and smoke everywhere, his eyes focusing on that entrance he thought somewhere ahead, the ceiling crackling, sending burning splinters onto the ground, pulling on the lead, hard, running, his lungs burning. A few meters, a huge roar as the stable roof collapsed behind them, but the cool air of the outside sucked into those raging flames. He stumbled outside, holding the lead tight, his eyes on the other horses running around him in general, trying to whistle, his throat parched blank with soot. Hearing faintly Gina's relief sobs, his body fuming, his hair leaning on his thighs, holding the lead, the horses around him. The firefighter walked up to him, strapping a mask on his face, letting the oxygen flow, walking away, and he breathed hard, his green eyes on the flaming inferno, the circus disappearing into the flames. Despite water now flowing freely from the hoses, the ladders, his tears carving light paths into the dark soot on his face. Snap, a photo, taken at that very moment of despair. This photo sent to all the TV stations, to websites, broadcast live, as reporters painted the picture, their surrounding crowd, fueled by tragedy, drinking their cries. So that's one.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Really good. I really enjoyed listening to that. You could feel yourself there. Yeah, that was really good. Really, really good. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
The description of the smoke, yeah, it was really good. Really good.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a very tragic moment because from this scene in fall, everything just goes downhill. when I got private messages on Twitter from my most ardent readers. Why are you doing this to me? I'm like, well, no, I didn't do anything. That just happened in the story. But
It's very good.
yeah, okay. So that's fall, and just thinking which one should I take for this. There is one scene which is very short, but this one I'm just gonna read it to you from book 2 of the Romance. So the Roman trilogy is basically a very dark erotic romance. The love story between a Roman general, Marius, and his Celtic slave, Kyle. So basically, the book follows this relationship from the moment that he's gifted this essentially sex slave, and he's a soldier, so has no clue what to do with, he doesn't want to have this slave, but he sort of pities him, and then the story evolves from there. Again, there are fans of this book and people who just said, that Marius is mentally ill, and I think that you can root for this story, or you can say that the protagonist is too controversial. And he is. He's not, he's not a nice guy at the beginning of the story, but you get to like him. And so in book 2, where we find out a lot of things about the protagonist, there is a scene where he has to go on a campaign. And what happens is that he has to leave his family behind. And at this moment in the book, everything is very happy. He's in this polyamorous relationship with his lover, Kyle, and he's married to a woman he loves, and they all sort of are in this poly throuple. But he has to leave them behind, and there is a scene when they are riding with a cohort, which people said expresses pretty well what it meant to be a Roman soldier. So I'm just going to read it for you, and it's the scene when they are basically going on to this campaign on the roads. It's very, very short, okay? Riding in the early morning hours under the pouring rain, their faces grim under their helmets, rivulets of water sliding down their faces, drenching their clothes, seeping under their armor. The leather rein slippery, the horses nervous, wanting away from the rain, tugging at their arms, their shoulders numb from holding them back to match the pace of the convoy, their capes weighing a ton on their back. Clavius's eyes drifted to Marius, the tall Roman's clenched jaw, his exasperation hidden behind the pale mask of his face, set in his usual haughty imperial superiority he showed only to troops. Only his eyes gave him away to his friend, whose striking blue eyes, pools of sadness on his handsome face. So, there's the romance for you.
That was amazing. I could picture the scene straight away.
Yeah, that's what happens in my head when I write. So there is a scene, and it gets as best as I can, right? Because sometimes it's very awesome, and I have a tendency to rush on my descriptions. I'm not going to describe you the various things on his armor because I don't care. What I care about is what you feel in the scene. So I'm very much a horse person too. So I know how it feels, to try to hold back a horse who doesn't want to. Doesn't want to stop.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure if you want to. There are other little scenes, but they're more sort of on the sex side, So obviously my books are filled with love scenes, but maybe that can be for. There's another one if you want the battle scene.
Go on. We've got time, haven't we, Adam, for one more? Yeah. Go on then.
That's very long. So if you want one more from the Romans, obviously this is during a war scene. So, but again, I'm not describing big battles in the Romans either, but maybe how it affects somebody who is supposed to be a very Marius is supposed to be obviously a very trained and experienced soldier, and he's leading this army, and he comes. So when we get to this scene, this is after battle. So they, if you have read Roman history or you have seen movies, you know how the Romans fought. And
Oh yeah,
a
formidable force.
They are fighting under the rain. So in this case, it's not raining yet, but he just comes back from battle. So that's a very short scene in the book, just to give a glimpse of, because in book 3 we are alternating scenes between home life in Rome, where he left his family behind, and him in basically in a war. So the book is very short, sections into a chapter where you have Maurice's life and his struggles as a general, and then his family in Rome, who is struggling with other things. So that is after battle. That single lonely moment when the battle was over, back to their camp, when the high seeped from their bodies, that warm rush of pounding blood replaced with fear the escape of death, bending to light wounds in the middle of howling, drying cries, stench of blood, urine, feces overpowering as they shed their armor with glassy eyes, trying to shut out voices. Away from prying eyes in his tent, Marius collapsed on the ground, heaving, wiping the blood out of his eyes. Visions of those killings, bursting skulls, dying eyes flashing up. Man pleading with frothing mouths as the light went from their eyes. Please, please, my wife, my children. Mercy, mercy. Too late. The blade cutting muscles and tendons like butter, discarding dead flesh. On to the next one with clenched jaw, arms aching, the mind gone somewhere, focused on survival only. A mass of men, churning that fetid mud under their feet, knee-deep despite the rain sky. Bodies falling to the ground to be trodden on, feet going into gaping mouths, silent eyes. Sudden sweat down his back, and Leonidas was there, holding his head as he threw up, hard, over and over again until his body shook with his sobs. He held him in his arms tight, letting him howl.
I've answered the last few times. Go on, Adam. You go for it. Oh,
I think that's great. Very visceral. I feel everything that was happening, and I would not want to be in his situation. I would not want to do that.
Yeah, without giving much away, because I think people might want to or are still reading the book. But one of my reviewers put Rasputin like suffering for book 3. It is actually, yeah, and you know what the funny bit is that for book 2, I had a review which said I have no idea what's going to happen in book 3, so I have to read it. And I was going to, I didn't reply because I don't reply to reviewers, but I was thinking in my head, yeah, I didn't know either what was going to happen in book 3.
I love that.
Literally what happened is I wrote chapter 1 and then my characters stopped playing and they kept quiet for a year. So and then book 3 was written in one summer, but I didn't know what was going to happen. And you know when something happens in the book and the characters are doing it and you're just sitting there and thinking, I'm not going to write this down, this is awful, and it is just not going to happen. But one thing I always told myself is I'm not going to betray my characters. So no matter how hard it is to write it down, I wrote it down and then I sent it to my early beta reader, and she wrote back and she said, "Oh my God, how can this? How could you just this word's it's very very gut punching and whatever." And I said, well, I could have turned the story and there is a specific injury that happens in the book, and I said I could have taken that injury out and then written it somehow, else. But then you need that gut punch in the book. You just need it, and it was to a connection.
Yeah,
it was to a point where I stopped. I wrote down the injury and I went, okay, this is permanent. And I went, oh my God. And then I had 3 days of sort of being in this state of anxiety, just thinking, am I going to keep this? And it has to be kept because I have these principles I follow.
Yeah.
I'm not what my characters are telling me, but then you get surprised because in my vampire novel, which is not published yet, my vampire killed somebody who was not supposed to die, and when he killed him, and I'm like, oh, you bastard, now I have to write it down, and he was not supposed to die.
I love that.
You can see the character just sneering at you. It just happened in a split second. So I'm writing this scene where he's supposed to scare this guy, right? And he just went, well, I'm actually, he just, you could see this in my head. He just looked and said, he's gonna die. I'm like, no, don't you dare, and then he killed the guy. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to write it now.
I love it when
there's nothing else. So basically, when I write, I call it the zone or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes I have no clue what I've written, so I have to read myself back and think, oh my God, I don't even know how these words came out, and then I have sort of like a mini panic attack of I can never write anything this good ever again.
Oh.
So I had these huge conversations with my writing friend, who is my imposter syndrome's biggest, fighting night or whatever I can call her, and she's like, of course you can write something as good as, and I'm like, no, never. This is the best time, So yeah, it's great.
I've talked about imposter syndrome before on the podcast. Yeah. People who don't have talent don't have imposter syndrome.
I have a huge one.
Only people who have talent have imposter syndrome. So you feel it because you're good enough. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, I have it for my job, and I'm in an upper management position, and people are like, you did this, and I know, this was luck. I was at the right place. This was, pure, whatever you want to call it, energies of the universe. But it's never me, and since I've been writing, it's been better because people are saying, yeah, but and now that I've published more books, the first 1-star review was awful. But then I said, I'm old enough now not to give a shit. I'm sorry about this.
No, don't. We don't mind. It's fine. Yeah, you can swear.
I just said I'm old enough not to give a shit about what other people think. And those people who 1-star the book are not my readers. But the first 1-star, when you have never published in your life, and this was actually when I was 10 years old, I said to my parents, I'm going to have to publish a book and whatever. So my 10-year-old self will be very proud of me now, I guess.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
But then I said, well, I don't care, these are not my readers. And so now I have, I got a couple of more of these lower grade reviews, but I always say, it's totally fine. That has nothing to do with how I write, because I also have these fanatic readers that is amazing, because I have a couple of them. It's not, crowds, and I'm not making, a fortune with this at all. Like, I have my day job, which is great, because otherwise I would be dying of hunger. But I have these amazing fans, or I don't know how to call them. Somebody said you shouldn't call them fans, but they call themselves fans. So what do I call them? And I went, if these 3 people, are the only ones who stay to read whatever comes out of my head, because I write first and foremost the stories that are in my head that I want to read, that I'm missing, or maybe they were missing from the universe. Then I'm happy, because it's one person or 3 or 4 or 100 or 1,000. I mean, I know a lot of people are very impatient to have success, to get, and maybe they do, and it's all good for them. But I'm very modest in what I see as a success, because there are so many books, and if I see that people are reading mine on KU, or they buy an ebook, and I'm going, out of this whole ocean of choice and books, somebody might drop out of that ocean, and to me that's already, I always say, when people have these depressed posts about their, our sales, sales are low, I only got hundreds of pages or whatever reads. And I'm always saying the only thing I want is not to have 0 on the dashboard, on the KU dashboard. But even if it happened, but I'm happy with, whatever comes, because if I live long enough, I gave myself 20 years to sort of maybe have like a small income next to my shitty pension that I'm going to get as somebody in education their whole life. So yeah, so I mean,
and to comment back on your person who gave you a 1-star review, I'm kind of expecting it.
Oh, Adam, hang on, you cut out. You're. Oh, you're back again.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
We got up to you're kind of expecting it, and then you dropped completely.
I'm kind of expecting at some point to get a 1-star review someday of something, and I'm okay with that, because I think that for somebody to do that, they must have read my book, or maybe purchased my book, or at least put some of their time and effort into my book.
Yeah.
I mean,
I had one which said that the only redeemable quality the book had is the low price.
But you know what? Some people write low reviews because they're having a bad day. Do you know what I mean? It's some people, they don't, quite often people who write reviews like that are just angry.
I use my low reviews I just, without screenshotting or anything, I just took the best sentences from my lowest reviews and I made marketing with it. And I got, and I got KU reads out of it, like almost, like a surge of people.
Wow.
Well, yeah, because you have to use whatever people drop in your hands. So I was going, well, yeah, okay, this is somebody saying, maybe they have a bad day, and then I have some amazing reviews which are rants about how the book sucks, and I went, well, this is a gold mine. Somebody wrote an essay about the book one of the Romans, and I could just use these wonderful sentences where I am absolutely like the shittiest writer ever, and I put that onto a poster and I posted it on Twitter, and people were like, oh my god, now I have to read this book.
Yeah, of course.
How bad could it be?
One of my reviews where the book is too saucy, so that was for false. So I used it. They're all the time kissing, so I used that as a poster. I said, of course they are.
That's really cool.
That's a one-click buy for me.
That's a really clever way of doing it. I love that. I might nab that idea.
You can't. I mean, if all of these things, I mean, we learn it on the job. There are always people who will, pull you down or anything. But the same for the writing. You can't have a random person. You can't despair over a random person picking up a book that is wrong for them, because there are many people who like books I will never pick up because I read the preview and I said that's not going to happen for me. The style or the writing or the story or whatever it's wrong. And I'm not a very picky reader, and that's perfectly fine, because maybe that person has like 600 5-star reviews, and I might not be a 5-star reviewer for that person. So I'm just not even going to pick the book up, because life is short, and I don't know, how many minutes I have on the planet, so I'm going to spend it on books I want to read.
Absolutely.
And tragic are now mine, because I'm a pantser, so I have to reread myself like 1,000 times.
Well, we have loved having you on our show today. Thank you for reading. Thank you for telling us all about yourself, and I will definitely message you about coming on again.
Yeah.
We are needing to jump off here, but this has been so wonderful. This has been great. I'm glad.
Oh, yeah, Adam, you cut out again. Stop moving.
Thank you so much for waiting and being so patient.
For sure.
Adam keeps cutting out.
Am I cutting out again?
You were again, yeah. Sorry, it's not your fault.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I don't know, at least wire somewhere. I reciprocate that. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and keep in touch. We would love to have you back on again, and to find out more about what you've written and your style and your thoughts behind it, and obviously to have your thoughts on other topics that we talk about. We hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know where to find me, so just put me a message and I see. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
be here. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, it's a pleasure. So, and with that, I am going to say fare thee well to everybody. And I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you happen to be in the world. And I am going to, wish you all the best and hopefully see you again very soon. And if not see you, hear from you very soon. And so with that, see you soon. Bye.
Bye.